Welcome back, movie lovers. I'm Josh.
And I am Chris.
And I'm Joseph.
And with our powers combined, we are
Garner
Brothers Movie Lovers. Special welcome to our brother Joseph.
Yes,
On the channel for the
multi-talented
first time.
YouTuber, photographer, videographer, and all-around good guy, Joseph.
Thank you.
He is
wow,
in
what the
town
introduction.
visiting from out of state, so we're super happy to have
Yes,
him.
and he is also a Garner brother.
He is. It's an important qualification.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to get such a big YouTuber, for sure. What are we reviewing today, Joe?
We're reviewing Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is directed by Destin Daniel Cretton. It was also partly written by him, as well as Dave Callahan and Andrew Lanham. The actors it stars Simi Liu, Tony Chiu-Wai Leung, Awkwafina, and Meng'er Shang, which I may have totally said all of those wrong. I'm very sorry. Soundtrack is by Joel P. West. This is by far the biggest film he has ever scored.
He and the director worked together on basically every movie.
Yeah. He's
Just Mercy.
Yep.
And some others.
And it was pretty cool. I thought he did a good job.
Yeah, it was really good, incorporating a lot of just traditional Asian instruments and stuff, and it was, and especially at the very end, I was noticing
Pretty epic.
how awesome it was at the very finale. Special shout out to Jackie Chan's stunt team who did the fight choreography in this movie, and especially to Brad Allen who worked on the film but passed away before it was released. Some excellent work, as he always did. The very first fight scene is on that train, and there's
On the bus.
It's a big old long bus. But yeah, that fight on the bus, not train, was super awesome. That's when I specifically noticed right away that like it felt like a Jackie Chan fight scene when the guy tries to rip his shirt off or his jacket off, and he gets all turned around and he uses it to like wrap up somebody else, and then he knocks him over and then he puts it back on, and I was like,
Total
that
Jackie
really
Chan.
felt like Jackie Chan. And there was a lot of stuff like that. It's pretty awesome. The stunts throughout. The building fight.
Yeah, the fight on the side of the building.
Oh my
also
gosh.
awesome. I will say, this is the best fight choreography I've seen, best martial arts I've seen outside of like a Hong Kong made movie. Like from like a Hollywood film, this is the best fight choreography I've ever seen.
Definitely the best that the MCU has ever given us, I would say.
Yeah, there's been some good fighting, like there's been some good choreography.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
We
But I
haven't
think-
seen martial arts like this in the MCU. This
No,
has been
yeah.
this is really different and very cool.
I feel it's a lot more entertaining to watch, like, versus somebody that's shooting power orbs or energy or like just zapping each other.
Or smashing
It's-
20
like-
people with a hammer at the same time.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch, like realistic
And
fight scenes.
there's not much shaky cam.
No.
Because, I mean, there is a moving camera, but it's not very shaky. There's lots of long fighting shots, and there are some like scene changes, I guess frame changes during fight scenes, but they're always very well placed, and just to help you understand better what's going on. So it's really, really good.
Yeah, very clearly shot fight scenes. You always can tell exactly what's going on. Really, really well done.
I loved when they went outside of the bus and you were watching it through the windows and it was moving as the other guy was moving. That was really cool.
Yeah, there was a lot of very cool cinematography during that fight, and the fight on the side of the building, I thought. Your point, Joseph, though, that you make, I think, brings up my only problem with the fighting in the movie, and that's by the end of the movie, more of it is mystical and stuff.
That's
and so,
true.
like,
That's true.
I
It's
cared a
less
little bit
realistic.
less about the fighting at the end of the movie because it was more magic-based and more super-powered and stuff, and all the fighting at the beginning, it all just felt like really good, like Hong Kong martial arts action, and so...
Yeah.
It was cool that the dragon gave them the abilities of every kung fu movie before this, of flying through the air and kicking multiple times and stuff like that. Made for a really cool, I guess, callback to traditional kung fu movies.
The cast did a great job.
Good acting all around.
I thought that there was a lot of, I laughed out loud more than once. I mean, it's not to the level of like Thor Ragnarok, but it was still plenty of laugh out loud moments that I enjoyed. I also felt it was very entertaining. There were few slow points in the movie. I felt like for the most part I was very entertained, but
I felt like
That's
it
just
moved
my
really
opinion.
well as well. I felt like they did a really good job of taking a lot of new people, a completely different story than we've ever heard from the MCU, and giving us all this new stuff without making it feel rushed, but also not making it too slow, I thought.
It's not a very long film compared to
Nope.
some of the MCU movies.
But it didn't feel rushed, even though everyone was new. Almost everyone
It
was
certainly didn't feel rushed. I felt like it was a little draggy
Yeah.
a couple times. But I know you didn't.
And I think
Yeah.
another person we went and saw it with mentioned that the slow motion was a little heavy
A little
in
much.
moments.
There were some cheesy points with the slow motion for sure.
Well, when you fall in love during a hand-to-hand combat, you have to have a little
Yeah.
slow-mo just to show it happening.
The villain was handled very well in this movie. That's something that Marvel movies are famously not amazing
One-note
with.
villains.
Yeah, and the bad guy in this movie, you can definitely sympathize with him. And at one point, you're kind of on board with him. At least I was, until you're not.
He gave a more layered performance, I think, too.
Yep, and it made all of the payoffs really feel earned at the end of the movie. The way they were able to handle all these new characters, the sister and the girlfriend and the main character and the father, all of them had these, I think, very earned payoffs in the finale of the movie that were extremely satisfying and very well done.
That reminds me of another thing that I really liked about the movie was the character development throughout. It was very believable, and it was I was getting emotional at certain parts
Oh yeah.
of the movie. It was well done.
Here's one of my gripes
Uh-oh.
about the movie. So apparently, Katie and Sean have been friends for 15 years. And, okay, so he has this whole past where he was like an assassin, and he's never brought that up. I can believe that just fine. And during those 15 years, apparently, he's never used any of his martial arts expertise in front of her to do anything. Okay. But when she finds out, so like he does this huge fight on the bus. Apparently he's kept up his martial arts during 15 years that he wasn't an assassin. But then he tells her all about his parents. And I'm just wondering, like, how has she never asked about his parents, his family, or any of that? Like, there should have been, there could have just been even one little line where she was like, you lied to me. You told me your mom, maybe
She
it could
did
have been.
say one line, but it didn't really make it much better. She just said, sure, maybe there's stuff that you don't like to talk about, and I understand that, and that was probably the only line they gave to us.
It was just a little funny to me that,
Sure. And also the fact that she's just okay with everything that happens throughout the movie. She's just like, yeah, okay, now you're doing magic. That's cool. Yeah, now there's a dragon, and I have magic arrows, and there's demons, and this is fine.
There's a little bit of convenience that way, but that's my only gripe about that.
His aunt comes into the picture, and she teaches him that he needs to embrace both the good and the bad of his past
Yeah.
in order to like fully embrace who he is or something. I liked the idea that everything that's happened to us in our past, good and bad, has brought us to where we are. We have to face our demons in order to really reach our full potential, and I liked that.
It's not just his past, the good and the bad from his past, but it's all of the good and bad decisions from his ancestors too. It's his whole heritage. Heritage is a big deal in Asian cultures, a much bigger deal than it is in Western cultures. And I think that's something we could learn a lot from, because I think that line was actually really inspiring to me, because looking back into my own ancestry, I'm kind of into genealogy. And so looking back into my own ancestry has really informed a lot of my identity now. Looking back at all of the good things that people did in the past and the bad things that people did in the past, and realizing that I am where I am now because of so many decisions that people have made before me. I think that's a really cool message. And when that came out in the film, I was quite pleased. I thought that was great.
We mentioned a little bit about Asian culture that was it's kind of hard for me to say whether or not it was appropriately handled. I have like very little knowledge about that, but it did feel like there was some, Asian folklore and stuff.
Right. Well, the director and so many people who worked on the film.
The director, the actors, the writers.
Yeah. If it were blatantly wrong about Asian culture, I think somebody would have fixed it along the lines. I'm sure if they're all happy with it, I'm happy with it.
I noticed that those lions in that movie are outside of every Asian restaurant. There's stone statues out in front of every Asian
the Chinese styled lions.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool to see those.
They were cool and they were freaky when they show up in the place and they start
attacking
prowling
people
around and looking at them. I was like, those are scary things.
And when they were attacking the bad guys, those guys were ferocious.
I loved it when the bad guy tries to shock him with his little taser thing, and then the lion just kind of looks at him and is like, whack! And he's flying across the screen.
So I have one issue. I know that you really liked the portrayal of the villain, and I already said that I think that Tony Leung gave a more layered performance to that character, even maybe than the way he was written. So I thought that he did a really good job. But I will say that I didn't always believe him. He was supposed to be this really complex character, and his motivations were supposed to be deeper, but sometimes I just didn't buy what he was doing. It didn't make sense to me with things that had been said earlier in the film or things that he had done earlier, or I can talk more about that when we talk spoilers, but I had a little bit of a gripe with that. And there is a verbal exchange between him and Shang-Chi at the end of the movie where they kind of accuse one another of having done things in the past. And the way they say it seems like it's been like a festering wound that's needed to come out for a long time. But there was no indication of either of those sentiments any point in the movie prior to that. And so when it came out then, I thought, oh, okay, that's been underneath, and they've been kind of stewing about that for a while. But it didn't really seem to affect the film before or after it was said. So I thought that was a little bit...
he was trying to use Shang. Why would he bring that up if he was trying to use him to help bring back his late wife, And maybe the other guy didn't use it because he was afraid of him, which is mentioned later in the movie too.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't think that bothered me at all, so I'm interested to hear what you mentioned specifically when we get to the spoilers.
All right.
Okay, and I guess I do have one thing. This was my biggest gripe of the movie. I talked earlier about how I really enjoyed the character development. Specifically, I really enjoyed the brother and sister's growth in their relationship throughout the movie.
For sure.
But it's kind of undermined in a clip
in the post-credit scene.
Yeah. And
maybe
that did bother me. I think so. I remember when we were talking after the movie, it seemed very clear that it was undermined, but I know that you interpreted it differently.
Well, I was just trying to play the devil's advocate. I think it is probably presented that way more obviously.
Yeah.
But I think there's
an explanation for it that will kind of mitigate that, but the way it looks like it undoes some of the relationship that they had built.
Right. And it's just not very... It
was also super dumb, aside from anything else.
Yeah.
You just didn't like...
That's how we should sign off at the end of this.
Yeah, let's rate this.
We do it in a 3-tier rating, which is also secretly many more tiers, but we say it's 3.
Okay. So 1 out of 3 stars?
It's just good,
it's either
fine,
or bad.
Oh, that's right.
Because usually online it's either great or it's the worst movie ever. That's how people are. If you say something good about a movie, someone else will come on and they'll say, "This one ruined my childhood." Ugh! Or if you say it's bad, someone will get on and be like, "You're the worst person ever for thinking it's bad." So that's how it is. It's just good or it's fine or it's bad.
Okay.
we're giving in to the internet hive mind.
But then every time I try to do this, we end up going, there's always secret other ratings that we've had involved in it. But I rated it at good. I liked it a lot. I would even say almost good, great, fantastic fireworks. Almost. Not quite. But at the end there, I did get some goosebumps as the finale was happening and they were doing the final Dragon Ball move. I was like, whoa, and the music was coming in nice, and I was like,
that really was the Dragon Ball move.
It was awesome.
He was totally charging it up.
Anyway, it was really cool.
Joseph, what do you rate the movie at?
I would also say this is good. I went in with no idea about what it was about, and I got very into the story very quickly. So I would say it was good.
I would agree. I think it's a good movie. I don't think it's on par with the MCU's best, but I thought it was good.
The tomato meter has given it a 93%, which is very good. And the audience score is 98%. Both of them align pretty well. I think that pretty much aligns with what we felt about it as well. And we highly recommend going to see this in theaters. Being safe, of course. Thanks for watching. If you haven't liked the video, do it now because it is mandatory.
You can check out some of my film music reviews on Movie Music UK. You can also check out the review for this film soundtrack written by John Broxton over there. He does an amazing job reviewing those film scores.
And this would be a really good move to see a soundtrack review for because of all the different, it's not your typical movie soundtrack that you go see from Hollywood films because of all the fun,
All the Asian
culture, and stuff. So it might be a fun one to go read. You can follow me on Letterboxd. I started one of those accounts. I haven't put up a review for this, but I've got a few up there if you want to see them. My handle is Bumbershoot. And Joe, you're on all the things. Instagram and YouTube and Facebook and the things.
I have a YouTube channel just under Joseph Garner. And my Instagram is probably my next biggest account. And that's under Joseph Garner 94.
Because he's 94 years old.
Yeah, that's why.
Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more of our content, and if you want to be notified every time we make a video, click the notification bell, and you'll be notified when we release new content. Now, spoiler warning from here on out, if you care at all. Which there always is, someone. One thing I want to mention before I forget, we talked about the theme of embracing the good and the bad in yourself and from your ancestry in order to reach your full potential. At the very end of the movie, after he's told that, you see him pondering for a long time, and he says that he's going to kill his father. That's what he understands in the necessary act of embracing your good and bad. He thinks that's what he needs to do in order to fully reach his potential, is embrace that bad and kill his father. And then at the end of the movie, you see that it was embracing his mother's mercy that was what he needed to do to really reach that full potential. Anything else you guys want to mention for spoileriness? There's more.
Yes.
I have more.
Yes, I have more. But let's talk about Trevor Slattery.
Okay, Trevor Slattery.
My name's Trevor Slattery.
I went into this movie remembering that in Iron Man 3 they had the 10 rings, and I was wondering like if they would even address that, if they would just ignore that was a thing that had already happened.
Yeah.
And they kind of tied that up pretty nicely, I thought.
Yep.
And it was
How did they tie it up? I forgot.
at the dinner they talk. The father talks about how he says that names are sacred. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he says in the past there was somebody who tried to imitate him and basically like pretend to be him, and that he was the leader of the 10 rings, and he went under the name the Mandarin, and he said he named himself after a
chicken dish.
Oh, that's right.
And he was the cheap version of the real leader of the 10 rings, and
Okay.
and then they also brought in.
But
Trevor
there was like an image of 10 rings. Like before all the broadcasts that the Mandarin did in Iron Man 3, there was this image and there were 10 rings around. So he really did use that organization. Tony Leung's character is the real leader of the 10 rings. This movie is setting up as the idea that, I mean, we learned that Trevor Slattery was a fake Mandarin back in Iron Man 3. And I know that really made a lot of people mad. I loved it. I thought it was really clever and very funny.
We have a pretty different opinion, I think, of Iron Man 3 than
a lot of
else.
people do.
And I think we really loved seeing Trevor Slattery come back.
And it would actually make sense if you don't remember Iron Man 3 very well to watch that one before you see this one, just because the Trevor Slattery payoff in this movie is great if you remember that really well from
I think the Trevor Slattery jokes stopped landing as well for me towards
it
the end.
went on a little long. Yeah, there was a little more of him
being dead on the battlefield. I just knew I already knew the joke before it happened, and then when it happened, it was just kind of like, okay. But
I thought it was fun to see Sir Ben Kingsley hamming it out.
Oh my gosh,
just having a lot of fun.
And I love his relationship with the
headless animal.
What did they call him? Kevin or something? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
And he was like,
What's what?
That! What is that?
You can see Morris.
Morris?
Oh, Morris! They can see you.
I love when he tries to explain why, the movie magic behind Planet of the Apes, and he just gets it all wrong. That was so funny.
Indeed.
And another thing that I didn't mention before that it doesn't really have to do with spoils, but I felt like the product placement was kind of heavy in this movie with the cars.
Oh man, I didn't even notice.
Gosh, there was a huge scene in a bamboo forest that was all inside of a car, inside of a Beamer. There's so many Beamers in this movie. It was over it. There's even a part where they're crushing a bunch of cars with the bus, and it's Beamer. And it's just
well, that's because everyone in San Francisco drives a BMW.
Okay, sure. Anyway, it was that felt a little. Anyway, I would have maybe liked to have seen the bamboo forest on foot. It went really fast because they were just but it did make for some pretty fun comedy as well with Trevor Slattery. So I don't know. There's some give and take there.
I suppose so. Okay. So here's my deal with the villain. The villain for 1,000 years has been this power-hungry warlord, right? He always wanted more power. They talk about this. And he did everything he could to get more power. And he was never satisfied. And he was always growing his organization. And he was pulling the strings on so many different things. And he lives super long because he's got the 10 rings. And that apparently grants you immortality or something. So he's this power-hungry warlord guy. He has one slow-mo fight with one girl and falls in love with her. And then we're led to believe that he loves her so much that he abandons his entire persona from the last 1,000 years.
This wonderful stay-at-home
he's
dad.
no longer power hungry at all. All he wants to do is love his wife and kids. Okay, maybe. But somewhere lurking, there's 1,000-year-long, warlord guy in there. And I'm kind of surprised that he could just totally change on a dime from, love fighting the first woman he ever love fights or whatever that was. And so now I'm just he never fought a woman before? This guy falls for you if he fights you, if you're halfway competent. And
well, he never fought a woman who could actually beat him. Okay, or a man. Maybe he would have fallen in love with anyone who could beat him.
Could have beaten him.
Also, another surprising element to that is that she fell in love with him.
After
being a 1,000-year warlord,
For sure.
she's such a moral person.
For sure. Yeah, and so then he's the perfect father until his demons catch up with him and they kill his wife and then I kind of buy his return to evil after that.
Sure.
But there are times when it feels he wants to be that dad again, when he wants to love his kids. And although did he ever love his daughter? It doesn't really seem like it. It seems like he kind of shafted her the whole time.
And I also feel I don't think he would have ever gone back to giving up the rings. I think that he had passed that point. All he really wanted was to bring back his wife. I don't think he wanted to go back to being the stay-at-home dad and have family night together and watch movies with popcorn and stuff. I think it was
play Dance Revolution.
They were just they
were totally doing.
Yeah, it was so weird. That's what 1,000-year-old warlords do with their kids. Okay. So yeah, there were just times when, I mean, it seemed like he wanted to be like when he loved his kids, but there were also times when it seemed like he just wanted to kill his son and stuff. And was he just using him the whole time to get his wife back, or was there still some?
I think that was a question until that moment when he released that anger that had been billowing up inside of him. Then you realized that, he doesn't care that much.
Yeah, but it seems like at the very, very end, like suddenly he switches again, and now he really does love his son. At the very, very end.
That was when that was because he saw
how wrong he'd been.
Well, he saw his wife in his son. That's why they had the slow motion callback. They had that slow motion callback, and that's when you realize he's embracing his mother, the good in his mother instead of the evil in his father.
That's good. I missed that.
But
yeah, well, anyway, I didn't always buy him because it felt like maybe his
I can see that,
totally
especially
the
happy dad moments. Yeah. Those were kind of
the other
place. But
the other thing that was a problem of convenience for me was now the Doctor Strange group suddenly notice him as soon as Shang-Chi uses the rings. He said, "We felt it in Kamertage." Why didn't they ever feel it when his dad was using the rings for 1,000 years? I mean, those guys are like the keepers of all weapons magical, and they didn't even know these things existed until Shang-Chi uses them, and suddenly they're like, whoa, there's a new magical thing, and we don't know what it is. Yeah. So that was another one of those elements.
And I think that was I think there was a few elements of, remember, this is in the MCU? And I think that was one of those moments.
Yeah, that was the time. That's how he becomes an Avenger, because, whoa, you used them and then they turn gold and now you're an Avenger. So,
yeah.
Whatever.
It was cool to see. I mean, it was really brief and it doesn't matter that much, but it was cool to see the Abomination come back. And interesting.
Even though he doesn't look like he did.
Right, but they're just making him look more like the comic books.
Yeah.
And
Wong.
And it is interesting to think that Wong is like sort of training him or something.
And also apparently hustling people by fighting under like in black market fights. Who knew Wong was into that?
Interesting, yeah. Maybe he's just using it to help train
the Abomination.
It was fun to see them show up real quick. There was a couple other cameos at the end in the post credits that showed up. We had Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. Interesting bit about Mark Ruffalo. He was not the Hulk.
No, he was
Bruce Banner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I guess he does.
He was Professor Hulk during Endgame.
Yeah, he was.
Because he finally merged his two personalities perfectly. But here he was, and he wasn't green and big.
That's true. Yeah, good point.
Wonder what's going on there.
Yeah, well, we'll have another Hulk movie within a bunch of other movies, probably explaining it.
So, I mean, the brother and sister have had this rocky relationship at first. The sister felt like
she was abandoned.
Yeah, and then it's building throughout the movie, and there's the final moments when he's about to let her go, and she's like, "Just do
dragon."
it." And he's like, "I won't abandon you again or something.
Go again.
I'll let you go again."
At the potential sacrifice of
the planet,
so many
everything.
People. Yeah, everything. Yeah,
no, I'll still hold on to you, and then we'll all get eaten by soul-sucking bat demons.
And it was amazing. Yeah.
But it was really good.
It was a moment.
Yeah.
It was a good moment, and thankfully, Awkwafina was there with her super arrows. But amazing that no one else could hit that giant dragon's
especially
neck.
all the people who'd been training their entire lives.
Yeah, that was actually another gripe that I had. She had only been training for a week
one
or a day or something,
yeah.
and then the Doctor Strange's people come through the portal and they're like, "You're coming with us." The guy with the 10 rings, and then Shang-Chi, and then they're like, "Awkwafina, you too," because she's got that week of bow training under her belt. They're gonna really need her in the Avengers. And yeah, it was.
Hawkeye needs a protege.
By the end credits, you see that the sister is now the leader of
the 10
rings. And so
she seems awful bad.
Yeah, there was villainous music playing, and she looked like a villain. She was talking like a villain. She sat down on the throne. Yeah, and
but she was never really a good guy.
No.
I mean,
So-
she was fighting against all evil, against her dad.
Yeah, well,
throughout the
against
entire movie.
world-dominating evil, yeah, she united
Yeah,
with the good guys.
she was
but
like
she was also
on the good side the entire time, and she was
Except-
always against the bad side.
beforehand. She was running an illegal operation of people beating the crap out of each other in a big building.
Right, it was like
So it was not a good organization.
Right.
She was
sort of
running
an underground
beforehand.
kingpin. But
yeah.
And now she has more power, and I think she will continue to be an anti-hero that is both good and bad, but mostly probably good. But it does seem like this end credit scene was dumb. It was
still
just dumb.
felt very inconsistent to
It
me
did.
at the end of the movie when she's been fighting for good the entire movie, and
Yeah.
you've seen this amazing relationship blossom between her and her brother, and then to see her throw it all away at the post credits just kind
and
of
lie to
felt
him.
it felt very empty, and it was one of my
It
favorite parts of the
undermined
movie.
it, yeah.
So
And I do
don't know.
feel also in defense of this whole thing that she was uniting with him because of her hatred towards her father as well initially, and then it became world dominating evil that would destroy everything. But I think that mostly there was a common enemy, and that's why she united and until they had this moment together, and then it did kind of feel undermined a little bit. So you're right. Like I do feel like there are some arguments against all of that, but no matter what, even if it is the way I'm talking, that final scene was dumb. It was just dumb. And the music was dumb. And
the way she sat in the chair.
it was all so dumb.
She,
Anyway.
in her defense, she actually made it look okay, but people don't sit in chairs like that unless they're evil.
It would be
So-
real evil to sit like that.
So I have one last spoilery grab. The people in Talo, was that the name of the mystical village?
Sure.
That have been training their whole lives to defend the world, and they all have like dragon scale weapons and armor, and they're all like super amazing martial artists. So when the bad guy shows up with his 10 Rings organization and they start fighting, initially it looks like it's going to be a total slaughter by the good guys slaughtering the bad guys. I mean, the lion thing, right, bats away the little shocky stick and the guy and everything. So like, and every single combat that you see for the first part of that fight, it looks like the people in that mystical village are totally going to dominate these bad guys. And then the bad guy runs off to go to the gate, the one thing they're all there to protect, and nobody follows him except for Shang-Chi. And he gets out there and he's fighting his dad out there, and I'm like, where's the rest of the village? They must have mopped up the last of the bad guys by now. Why haven't they come to help? And then the next time we see them, they're all captured by these bad guys, and I was like, how did this happen? Giant lions? Like, what? Did they
didn't
stop
even notice
fighting? Did
this.
they lay down? Like, how is this happening? So anyway, I didn't think that was very good, but
I also,
That's a
we
small
kind of
guy.
talked about this after we saw it, but I thought it was a little intense for a Marvel movie that this entire village was not only killed, but they all lost their souls.
So those, I will say,
Hey,
those monsters were freaking scary. They did a good job of making you fear those things. Just the little ones were really creepy and sucking out souls and then bringing them back. And then when the big one came out, it was like, holy moly.
and
That is a
even
thing of nightmares.
even when the good guys win in the end, it's still, I mean, so many people
A bunch
lost
of
their
people
souls
lost their
for
souls.
eternity. It's like such a
we don't know
pretty dark
exactly
for
what
a
that means,
MCU
but it
movie.
sounds bad.
it sure does.
I also was hoping that wouldn't happen, because it would have been another one of those things that was just there's no consequences in these movies,
Nobody
and
ever
people can
dies.
come back. All their souls come back, and everybody stands up, and the dad gives him a nod and a wink, and he's like, "We can go play dance whenever you want." Would have been dumb, but you guys also mentioned
Maybe
the souls
you know,
could have-
maybe the
they could have
souls
gone
could have
at
come
least.
back and like flown up into the sky or something.
Once the bad guy was defeated, yeah.
Whatever.
But no, they're all
nope, they're all
gone
in
from
hell or
forever.
something. I don't know, something horrible.
They don't even
happened to them.
exist.
They went
Yeah.
to Dragon Purgatory.
Yeah, who knows? It's weird.
Anyway, but it's a good movie.
Yeah.
Yep, we did
We did have just ragged on it.
but we really liked it. I really like. I almost thought it was as good as the best that the MCU has. I do think it ultimately fell somewhere between the best and the average stuff. It was kind of an upper tier average MCU movie. It was the upper tier average MCU movie. How many?
It was the best of the middle.
The best of them.
Sure. Yeah, or the worst of the best. The worst of the best, best of the middle, upper average MCU movie. Anyway,
It was fun.
Yeah, it was.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Remember to like and subscribe. And in case we don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Let's get started.